I'm very excited as well to introduce to you the guest speaker this evening, who is someone that I would like to call a CEO extraordinaire, because Rene van Wyk has held multiple positions, which I know you can see on the, on the bio that we sent out. And for me, he's had a career that spans many decades in the sectors that he's worked. But I think that the position in terms of he's going to speak to us about CEO perspectives, etc. He joined Nedbank in 1993, and he was in very senior positions and specifically focused on risk areas like credit risk, etc. But for 7 years, he was the CEO of Imperial Bank, and he actually became the registrar of banks in November 2011. So definitely not someone to mess with. And don't hide all your credit issues with. And he retired from that position at the end of May in 2016. And he's now, he joined the ABSA Group Board as a non-executive director on the 1st of February in 2017. And he actually became the interim group CEO of ABSA from March 2019 until the 15th of January 2020. So they have a lot of faith clearly in his abilities and skills, as do we. But I think it's really important to note that his ability in terms of agility and alignment and engagement and the things that are really important at Vinci is why we wanted him to speak today. Because I think that this is really critical. Not only did he agree to step in as an interim CEO after Maria Ramos retired until the appointment of the new CEO on the 15th of January 2020, but I think what's really important is that he remains on the board and of ABSA, and it's critical that the leadership and the direction that we get from people is people who have this knowledge and understanding that to manage technology, innovation, and people in a systemic way requires agility, alignment, and engagement. So I hope what you get from Rene today is that you are able to actually see the way that he operates and the things that he contributes and has done. And I'm, for one, looking very forward to the discussion. So Rene, I shall hand over to you, and thank you for giving us your time and your energy and your space today. So thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Mona. Yeah, look, I think I'm going to just share experiences. I'm not going to give you a lecture. And, some of the issues that I encountered whilst being in the industry, and still is in a way, that you come across and you say, well, how does this happen? Now, like Yuri, I'm in the banking world and I've been in it for a long, long time, apart from my stint at KPMG. But banking is about people, and people, it's clients and staff. And one of the, I remember when I was registrar of banks, you would go around and you speak to all the CEOs of the big banks and say, okay, well, what's your strategy? And they will all come up with a slogan, putting the customer first. Now, I know from my own experience, this side of the desk as a banker, and the other side is the registrar of banks, the complaints that you get and how banks are really unable to put the customer first and the customer interface with the bank, how frustrated people get with banks. And, I often say to my friends that when you go and it's a dinner, then they hear you from a bank and, then the complaints come. And especially if it's the bank that you are with. So you keep quiet about the fact that you're a banker. But it really is a problem. And then, so what causes that? Now, I can't give you a list that you can say, well, this is it, and if you fix that, it will sort itself out. I think life is just far too complex. But I do know there are a couple of things that, and funny enough, there's not always a solution. It is running a big organization of 30,000, 40,000 people across multiple jurisdictions. That's not an easy thing. There's no quick solution for everything. And there are different cultures that you have to deal with. But there are some basics that I can highlight. And, One thing that I can share as well is that when I go back to my auditing days, I was on the audit of a major power supply in South Africa. And I was in the chief buyer's office. The chief buyer was at Wilby also. And in front of him, he had a very good clerk, a bright young guy. But everybody wanted this guy. And so he was in quite demand. But in front of Wilby was the monthly checks that they had to post. Now, maybe checks aren't that popular these days, and I think they're being phased out. But in those days, and I'm talking about 1975, that was it, checks. And you can imagine the number of checks that had to go out on a monthly basis or at month end. It was a pile of notes. I mean, it took days and days to put in an envelope. And what Wilby and them were doing is the young clerk would read out the check number, and Wilby would fill the check number on the remittance advice, then take the check and put it in the envelope. Another guy came in, one of the senior managers, and he was looking for this young guy. And Rene van Wyk, the senior manager, asked Wilby, what are you doing? He said, no, I'm writing in the check number on the remittance advice. And Ronnie said to him, why? He said, no, but I just think it's decent to tell the client what the customer, the supplier that we're paying, what the check number is. So Ronnie turned to me and he said, Rene, are suppliers actually interested in the check number? So I said, no, they're just interested in the check and that the amount is right and it's not a stale check. And so he turned to Wilby again, no. And Wilby took his glasses, threw it on the table, rubbed his eyes, and he said, well, my company's asked me on this form to fill in the check number on the remittance advice, and I will do it until they remove it. Now, so that is prevalent in many, many, many companies. They're doing their job faithfully and dutifully, but boy, oh boy, does it add anything? No, but they don't question it. And so the question is, what causes that, and why doesn't it come out? And so I've got a few topics that I just listed here, and it's bureaucracy. I'm looking at performance appraisals. I'm looking at culture surveys, and I'm looking at management styles. And I think they all contribute in one way or the other. Apart from the fact that people who are probably more skilled than I am in human behavior, but a lot of people can't change. And Uri talked about reskilling people, and certainly I know the banks are doing that to the extent that they can. But you'll be surprised in a large organization how many people cannot change and don't want to change. And but if I then just come into, one thing about bureaucracy, again, you were seeing on the CV that I spent time in Germany, and I was on the audit of Philips. And I worked at Philips in Germany. And basically what happened is that the internal auditors would do most of the work, and external audit would just review their work. And the second year I got to Philips in Hamburg, they were gone. And I thought, well, what's going on? So I asked, and I said, no. Philips had a good look at themselves. And, the question that they were trying to deal with, and in those days, Philips was still very big in audio, TV, etc. The DVD, they were the first to invent the CD. I remember way back in 83, looking at the showcase there in the head office with a CD player. But when they got the thing to the market, the Japanese products were out, and although theirs were superior, they couldn't sell it because they were too late. And Yeah, okay, they could sell it, but not at the volumes that they needed. The TV system, they had a system 2000, which by all was far superior than Beta or VHS, and yet they couldn't sell it. Again, they said, well, what was causing this? And so one of the things they found out is that they had a bureaucracy within Philips, and it took for ages for them to get their product from research onto the market and onto the shelves. And one of the things was that internal audit had to audit the process before they would release it for sale into the market. And that was a process that was just far too long, and also tied up into bureaucracy and not releasing because of this little thing or that little thing. And so the upshot of it is that they disbanded internal audit. Now, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying this is what happened. And in an effort to free up the organization so that they could get their products to the market. Now, there may have been very good reasons in the past of product failure and accountability and liabilities that may have led to an internal audit process that became a bureaucracy. But bureaucracy creeps in very quickly into an organization, especially large organizations, because this whole thing of control and being on top of things and knowing what's happening is massive. It is really massive. And therefore, also linked into with what Uri is doing, digitization and bringing in digital platforms, you struggle with bureaucracy. And it slows down the pace at which you can do things. So, I can give another practical example as well that when I see ABSA for that short period, I made it basically my job to go into the branches and visit them physically, some announced and some unannounced. And I don't know, I visited about 82 branches in South Africa, and then and also into the rest of Africa, I would do that. But the thing I would do is also go into the back office and look at what people are doing and ask them, do you know what you're doing and why you're doing it? And, and you'll be surprised how many times people would say, well, they fill in this and they file it there, but they don't know why. But the system says, the whole procedures manual says, I must do it. Now, you can imagine the cost effect of that, of printing documents, filing it, checking something, but nobody knows why. And it takes up a lot of time. So now I said to people, but why don't you raise this issue? I mean, but people don't, and that's maybe human nature, I don't know, or fear, you can call it whatever you like, but it doesn't come to the fore. And so I was traveling with the head of the branch network, and I said to her, you need to pull in a team and look at this, and because it's, cost efficiency is a huge thing in banking. And she did, and they got a think tank together, and they looked at all the procedures that they had to do, and there were about 75 in the branch. And after a 3-day session, they reduced it to 30. That was really necessary. But that's been there for I don't know how many years. Nobody challenged that, and so running a big organization, you have to understand the bureaucracy that is there, and it's human nature. I think some people would want to be important and therefore have many meetings, and they can't manage properly. But the whole chain of command and who's responsible and who's accountable eventually leads to bureaucracy. So that is something that I found that in the corporate world, and I found that not just at ABSA where I was. It was at Nedbank, it was at Imperial Bank. even although Imperial Bank was a lot smaller, you'll be surprised how quickly bureaucracy crept in there. Sometimes people hide behind it. You sit at an exco and you make a decision. And so I could go and do it. But no, they have their little kingdom, and now they have a meeting, and the way they communicate is not the way it was decided at exco. So the whole thing about putting the customer first. So it's on the sticker on the wall. But practically, if you listen to customer complaints and the ombudsman stats, and you get the complaints as CEO, I had a direct line. People would write emails to me, and I would respond to each and every one of them, and take the phone calls and get my ear blasted off. But some of them were, a lot were complaints that you knew they were just taking a chance, but there were some serious ones. Dealing with bureaucracy, is a key thing in an organization because it's a slow cancer. And you need to identify that. And in a big organization, it is very, very difficult. But it's also the way you structure the group and who's responsible for what that can lead to that bureaucracy, and who's important and how important I am seen to be by others. I know that with the Barclays apps, how bureaucracy crept in there in terms of who makes the decisions and who do you have to refer to for a decision. And it's all much good corporate governance and control, and that you don't let something slip. But in the end, it led to a lot of bureaucracy and less focus. And so the client becomes second because you're all internally focused.
And I think that's some of the questions that are coming out now. So one of the questions to you is, somebody's asking, isn't it about having the right leadership in our organization, having leaders who want to actually empower the employees?
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the points I would have come to later on in terms of management styles. And so I'll touch on that a bit later.
Okay, so that question will be answered. And then somebody else has also said, I've experienced Exco and Manco discuss ops issues and other trivial gossip in the organization.
No, that's very true, because, if you, for a lot of people being in the Exco in a meeting, and it's a big thing to say to their staff that I'm an Exco. But what do you decide? And it's boring stuff. And how does it add value to the day-to-day operation of the entity? But they won't go out and say, no, it was boring. I'll say, no, it's very important, It's because people want their self-esteem lifted up. And they themselves create bureaucracy below them to prop themselves up. So many Mancos and Excos, a lot is discussed at such great length that it actually kills what you want to really achieve. So inefficiency is huge. And this is not now pointing to a bank in particular. So don't get to that conclusion. I say it's fairly general.
And I think somebody has commented here by saying, I can attest, Rene, banking is highly regulated. Compliance stuff is kept as assurance or part of evidence. We've always done it this way. It has destroyed many industries, as we are resistant to change. We kind of think customers come first, yet policy and procedure actually comes first. And I think given the Exco and Manco discussion, it's also around, from our own perspective, the organizational culture. Having Exco and Manco that focus on ops issues, it means that none of the strategic imperatives and the strategic issues actually get implemented, because Excos and Mancos should be focused on the strategic imperatives so that things can actually roll. And also, when you speak of gossip or grapevine communication, I really think that shapes an organizational culture. It actually it stops people from actually communicating really important human behavior and having that sort of camaraderie at work. So I would definitely agree with you, Paresh, around that Exco and Manco getting involved in ops and gossip, etc., actually shifts an entire organizational culture as well. So I think quite a few comments coming in as well, Renee. And then one other question was connected to, I know you said you'll answer the question around the right leadership and having leaders who want to empower their employees, but another question was connected to comments earlier around, walking on the floor and giving that example of what you did. And one of the comments around managers is the managers that are on the floor. And I suppose this is that sort of thing between not getting too involved in the operations, but managers that are on the floor and know what's going on and have that pulse are generally able to problem probe and solve things better because they have an understanding. So I was just wondering on your views related to that type of management, and maybe that will go to your leadership discussion you're going to get into now.
Yeah. Well, firstly, let me just say upfront, I agree with that. I agree that the managers should be on the floor. And just to give you a very practical example, visiting the branches, especially when it was unannounced, because then I didn't know I was coming. I went to this one branch, and there's a colleague standing there at the ATM dealing with clients and helping them. And so because I'm unannounced and people didn't really know me that well, and I didn't walk around with a big thing, I walked in with normal clothes, jean or short sleeve and whatever. So I didn't have a CEO tag on my body. And so I would say, can I please speak to the manager? But you could feel there's a vibe in that branch. And a person turns around and says, no, I am the manager. And that to me, taking charge of the branch, I say to them, is the most important thing that you can do. You're the CEO of this branch. And your clients are the most critical thing. Just to bring it down to that level and seeing how it actually empowers people is critical. And then you start crossing this barrier of putting the customer first and being less involved in the politics. But that takes a huge amount of maturity, and people aspire to certain positions, and so and when they get there, then that's all they wanted in life. So unfortunately, that's human nature.
Yes, well, Renee, just to comment that clearly when research, we speak about validity and reliability when we do quantitative, and somebody's commented, and I can't see who it is, who says, by the way, Renee walked the floor with me and is spot on. So clearly you do walk the talk and say what it is. I can't unfortunately see who it is, but someone you have walked the floor with has made that comment. So please do carry on. Regina Masete.
Okay.
So please do carry on. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so the other thing that I found that was very problematical for me was performance appraisals. And I saw that in all the organizations I worked. And in essence, most performance appraisal systems would be a person would, you would rate yourself, and then you go and sit with your manager and then have a rating done. And that's captured on the system, and invariably is linked to a bonus. So now you observe how it is done. Generally, especially where I worked, it was more or less you have to rate somebody 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or poor, non-performing, good, outstanding, and excellent. But the employee had to rate themselves first, and then go and discuss their rating with the manager. And so if the options are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because you convert it to numerical numbers, and you look at what comes out at the end when all of this is consolidated, you get a 3.3, you get a 3.4, you get a 3.8. Where does that creep in? And a 4.1 and a 2.8. There's no room for in between. It's either this or that. So what does it point out to one? It says that people are uncomfortable with this thing. And in a big organization, to have people, it's not a machine, be consistent in how they do it is very problematical. And I've seen how ratings are done by one and by another, and they totally differ in terms of the interpretation of what is good, what's excellent. And I'm going to come back to a very important point on the whole performance appraisal. I'm not saying it mustn't be done. I think it's right that people must know that they belong, that they contribute, and that they're valued. And if people aren't performing well, then they must leave the organization. So, but it's the how. And what I'm against is this whole scientific approach to it, and to try and box it, and then look at that outcome and then say, right, well, we've done the job. It basically boils down to ticking the boxes, but you don't look at the results. And a classic example would be, I said, well, okay, if I look at our HR summary of ratings, then the average rating would come outside 3.5 or 3.8, That means we're a performing organization, because most of the people are good and above good, close to outstanding and excellent. But where are the results? Why are results not there? How's that thing possible? If everybody's so damn good, where are the results? And nobody can answer me that. So I said, well, then there's something wrong with what we're doing. Now, the other problem is that you will start seeing the effect it has on people when they do their appraisal. So they mark themselves up because they know the manager's going to mark themselves down so that they can still get a reasonable bonus. And then you say, well, what character is that creates within an organization? So linking the performance appraisal to money is already a serious problem. And where it's more difficult is if you have somebody that's doing sales, how many loans have I written? It's easy to calculate. But somebody that's maybe in the accounting function or HR function or IT function, seeing that output isn't that easy. And so now you get to this very difficult situation where everybody must have a job description. Now, I can see the merits in that. Okay, because if they don't know what they're supposed to be doing, then what? And in a big organization, that's very difficult. In a small organization, you don't need that. If you do need it, well, then there's something wrong. But so they don't have a job description. Now, the guy, let's just say I'm the clerk, and here's my job description. And I get promoted because my boss is promoted. And now I get a junior to come and do my job. So I say, well, here's a job because this is what I used to do. Now, if I go back to my Ubi example, but who questions whether what I'm doing is still appropriate and applicable? I'm not going to mark the guy down because that's what I used to do. So if I mark him down, well, then it points the finger at me. That's human nature. It's just, it shows you how performance appraisals and job descriptions can actually lead to people being more internally focused than looking at the customer. So that was something that really bothered me a lot. And and I know there's a move to try and simplify performance appraisals to move away from this type of thing. But you can see the behavior once it's linked to money as well. That is just, I hated bonus times in when I was the CEO. Or whenever I was a manager with my team and sit down with the bonuses. I hated that. I said, I wish there weren't bonuses because it brings up behavior that actually that is disgusting and it demoralizes you and from very, very senior people as well. But I don't have an answer for it because the corporate world and bonuses and performance bonuses, it's so core to banking and the corporate world that I don't think it's going to be changed easily. But nevertheless, I think it led to a lot of the people focusing more on themselves than actually the client. That also worried me that you do performance appraisals, and then you have the inconsistency of one person believing outstanding, you need to do this. Another one saying, well, good is good because if you do what you should be doing in terms of job description and do it well, then you've done it. But you have to do something more to get to excellent, whatever, but the job you're doing is impossible to do it. And so it becomes a demoralizer for people, because how can they outperform? But so there's inconsistencies amongst the top echelons in organization as to what is this. So one manager will be like this, and the other one will be like that. And then you get to the bonuses, and I have to slice up the cake and say, right, okay, well, this unit came out tops, and they need to get X, Y of the bonus. And this unit, brilliant, outstanding, but they only got 4 people. But they're brilliant. But you can't give them a bonus that they actually need to get, because there's not a pool. The pool is not big enough for them. So how do you square that box? So but all of this leads to people being more focused on themselves and not focusing on the customer. And so that for me would be one of the items that I would leave you with, the performance appraisals and its effect on the organization. Then the other thing is culture surveys. It's the most boring thing that's in an organization is another culture survey. Oh, yes. And you can see how people react to it simply because a timeline is given. And it said, like, okay, look, the culture survey will be released, and you have to have it in by March. So you got a month to try and sort it out. Without fail, in all the organizations I've been in, last minute, last week, please urge your people to do the survey. Please do the survey. People aren't interested in it, and the ones that are interested probably have a gripe. But you have to push to get the stuff done. Then it's done in the last minute or so. Now, how much energy has been given to that, and how much thought has been given to that? The whole process tells you it's not a good process. And I've seen in the organization I've been in where you get a result coming in that it basically says this place is about to implode. The culture is so bad. Yet it's still there. It's still there. So we hang our hats on certain things. Now, knowing your culture and knowing your people is important. I mean, I'm not saying, but it's almost as though people somewhere have thought about it and then said, okay, let's break it into a formula. Let's do this, and then the outcome we can assess it according to a scale. That doesn't work. It doesn't work, and something better has to be developed, in my opinion, and maybe it can be a doctorate for somebody that can help there. And the one thing that you need to understand, it's like, I'm a CA. I was trained to be a CA, and but most of my career I had to deal with people issues. I'm not trained for that. I've learned and the hard way, but it's not my passion. Dealing with complaints and all the intricate problems of people. But so I can deal with numbers, I can deal with strategy, etc. But now you put in front of me, I must evaluate X, Y, Z. I just want to get it over and done with. And I know my colleagues that were with me in the various organizations. They weren't too keen on performance appraisal because I knew we were working as a team. It was almost an insult, not a positive thing. And then you have to do 360 reviews, and you get another one and another one. Oh no! I've got more work to do. I can't do all this stuff. So what I'm saying is, it's not a good process. The concept may be great, but the practical application is very challenging and subjective. Then just I'm conscious of time, management styles has a massive impact on an organization. I cannot emphasize it enough. And I've seen them all. People who, CEOs who are close to dictators, and I've said to people have asked me, I said, you know what, in my life I have learned from people, but I've learned a lot from people who are absolute terrible managers. And a lot I've learned is not in terms of information. I learned I don't want to be like you one day. So I thank them for that, because I followed that principle as I moved on in my career, to say, well, I will never be like that person, because it's not positive. I can see the negative impact. I can see the negative impact it had on me, and I wasn't going to do that to somebody else. And so I honestly believe that good leaders have got the ability to see talent and to set them free. It goes against the grain in a highly governed organization, because you're scared that if something goes wrong, they say, well, you didn't control this so well enough. But I always said to my managers, I trust you, I don't do the job. If something is wrong, you come and tell me, and then we deal with it. But I'm not going to micromanage you, and get on with it and get going, because we slow up the process. So if you can't make decisions, well, then you shouldn't be in your position. So, and I try to encourage that. Even when I'm in countries, I say, no, this country, we don't know your country. We can't tell you what to do. You need to come up with your solutions for this country, and run with it. This is your business here. So setting people free, I mean, it's a wonderful thing to see. But if you stifle it, and you work with your colleagues, or you're the subject of that stifling, it's disempowering. And where does the customer fit in? You lose interest. And what I would say to people is, being humble is not a weakness. It's actually wisdom, because if you have to make every decision, you'll be so busy with all the problems that you won't see the wood from the trees. And B, everything sits on your shoulder and nobody shares the load. So no, be humble. Allow other people also to be important. Allow other people also to speak, and feel the responsibility. I think it's very, very important. Another thing is that I also experienced is when you look at strategy or something new to do, well, why don't we go to XYZ? Because they're best of breed. And then learn from them. Now, the logic is that you can fast track. I don't have a problem with that. But I said, well, how did they get to best of breed? Who did they go and see? So the answer is, no. I just sat and thought about the problem and said, well, how do we address it? So why can't we do that? They're no different to us. So it's just a question of, let's do it. You need to empower your people. Say, but you've got the knowledge. You can think about it. Let's come up with a solution. And then, seeing the future, that's another topic. So if you say internally focused, you don't see the future. And, I always say to people, when the first cell phones came out, Nokia was the phone. You had a few others, but it was Nokia. Where are they today? Gone. They're gone. What caused it? I don't know, but I think they were too internally focused. And they thought their product is the greatest and didn't see the others coming. Self-focused, self-important, I don't know, but it's Kodak, it's gone. They didn't see it coming. So, if you're caught up in your bureaucracy, seeing different things, seeing the future is challenging and becomes very difficult.
There is another question for you. So I think people would like to ask you some questions. So the question is, unions have interfered in performance appraisals in the past where they want every employee to get a recognition bonus regardless of poor performance. How can we reinforce KPI requirements and exclude external parties from slowing down organizational requirements where meeting targets is concerned?
Yeah, look, I think that's very difficult. But one must also recognize that there are different levels in the organization. And so at the lower levels in the organization, your bonuses and that is almost like a 12th check. It's not a massive number going way north. But unions do play, and they do play an important role. But if you see unions just as a negative, then you will deal with it in that way. But if you say, well, hang on, let's work with it constructively, I have found that the teams who have done that were actually quite successful. Unfair labor practices is a reality. It's no secret, and so employees also need to be protected because there are lots of bad managers out there.
Does anyone else have other questions? I see we've got a comment here, being humble is not a weakness, but a wisdom. I'm humbled. So I think certainly testament to your, approach, Rene. It's often, unfortunately, when people hold very senior and powerful positions, they often utilize that power to wield things. And I think just from the comments made about you, of people that know you, it is clear that that's not how you are and how you've influenced and impacted the sector. So thank you for that.
So I think if I can summarize just a few bullets, maybe tweaking it and spin it back to you and the audience. The very first one is always question what we do. Be hands-on, walk the floor. Second, get involved. Don't be shy to roll up your sleeves. And a good friend of mine, Ron Pretorius, wrote that book, Servant Leadership, and I think you shared that with us. Also, thirdly, to be open-minded, embrace change, understand people, and, don't lose sight with human nature and the requirements. Fourthly, your whole point on bureaucracy, I think was very interesting. And, you must not let people hide. So don't let anybody slip out. Everybody must take accountability and responsibility. I think also you pointed out, and you didn't say it in so many words, but as a CEO, you lay awake very often and you wonder and you worry about things at work. And there are many things that you shared with us, and I think we really find that very fruitful. You explained to us the interesting imbalance between corporate governance, customer centricity, and all the challenges around that. I found your discussion around optimization very, very useful, and I could hear you spoke from the heart, all about the efficiencies and all of that. Then the conundrum around performance appraisal, acknowledge people, their contribution, and then constantly ask yourself the question. And I think that's where some of these questions come up. What's my blind spot? And I think that's very valuable. So we appreciate that wisdom. And then you mentioned cultural surveys, and I thought back many years ago when I did some cultural surveys, so I'll leave it there. I'll acknowledge you, and I agree with you on that one. And then I think you left us with some pointers at the end and say, look beyond the horizon. What do you see? And while you look at the horizon, you must also look backwards and say, where are my blind spots? So I personally think, you shared some interesting stuff. I'm curious to see how Lita summarized that, but definitely some thoughts that I will ponder this evening and the week to come that will give me direction, and I value your input. Thank you, Rene.
So from my side, I look very forward to seeing Leta's illustration, and thank you so much for everyone who has joined us. So Leta, I hand over to you, and thank you for your talent in advance. And this is our gift to all of you about the session today that you've joined and embarked on. Leta, over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Marla. So we started off by saying the curiosita is really about discussion and academic debate. And we had the conversation around what is a true sustainable environment, the Bill Gates Green Manifesto. What I thought was important there is it's going to take bold steps to start giving back. And Prof. Klopper spoke to us about mobilizing capital for green energy, consider what you buy, expand your research and development, and then shape public policy. We had a couple of discussions around the fact that we need to push that onto the agenda. We need to create our own future through this. And even though compliance is not really the goal, it's sometimes a very good starting point. We don't want to lose the learnings from COVID. We want to use the new opportunities, for example, sitting in that airplane and asking, is this travel really necessary? And then we went into Yuri's presentation around digital trends and disruptive technologies. The points that he made there was that every industry is being impacted by the fourth industrial revolution, and that banks are in a unique position to really make a positive contribution. They are facing incredible competition, especially from non-bank players, the Googles and the Facebooks. He mentioned $5 trillion, which I thought was fascinating. And the problem is the banks are sometimes very slow to respond to that change. You also mentioned shareholders and how we should be engaging shareholders. And then he spent some time talking about his approach to the research, relativism, multiple views. And I enjoyed the story that he told about the fact that things are changing from where the bank said, well, we can do everything ourselves, to now being more open to collaborate. He spoke about the fact that he's using an interpretive diagram. We spoke about interviews and focus groups, and a couple of those pitfalls, or traps and pitfalls around positivistic background, no objective reality, context specific, and checking for those shared meaning. If we talk about something like blockchain, are we really understanding the same thing there? His main contribution would be a framework to test or to develop an integral approach to adopt emerging technologies, and the fact that other banks in emerging countries would be able to adopt that as well. And then Rene went through his learnings as a leader in the field, saying that it really is difficult to run a big company. And sometimes you have to ask yourself, how did this happen? Sometimes a company's strategy is very clear. We put the customer first, but the customer might not necessarily believe with you or believe you. They are still frustrated. You mentioned applying the basics, asking the question, why am I putting the check numbers on the checks? Maybe my customer doesn't even need that. Talking about reskilling, questioning and changing. You should know why you do what you do. The slow cancer of bureaucracy can really slip in very, very quickly and slow things down. You can see how people are saying, well, I'm accountable, I'm really important, and I'm running my own empire. Be very careful about how you structure the organization, because you can allow bureaucracy in like that. Gossip can be very destructive, so watch out for that. I particularly liked managers walking the floor. That is important. Performance appraisals, don't box it, but link it back to results. The fact that performance is linked to money sometimes make people more inwardly focused, and they don't necessarily focus on the customer. They focus on how we're going to divide the cake and what is my piece of that cake. How does HR link to the bottom line, or how does anyone else who's not necessarily involved in sales could sometimes be very tricky. He spoke about the fact that culture surveys and 360 surveys don't always necessarily work or give us the information that we need. We need to find a better way to do that. Leadership style is critical, and the fact that he's learned from people how not to do it was a very interesting insight. As a leader, you should really identify your talent and set them free, allow them to perform, allow them to grow. And then finally, humility and empowerment is absolutely critical so that you can see your future. We don't want to be like the Nokias and the Kodaks that we've spoken about. And that in a couple of minutes is really what we've covered in the last 2 hours. As Dr. Marla said, we'll be emailing this to you, so please share this widely and share that with your teams and with others as well. Marla, that's it from my side. Over to you.
Letta, I think you're magnificent, and I'm sure everyone will agree that to Rene and Yuri, we hope that this is a little something to you to remind you of your time and sharing your knowledge and sharing your ideas, letting your voice be heard. Letta, you are absolutely remarkable. I always love to see, even though I've seen many of your images of our work, I absolutely love to see them every time, the little detail and the things that you get in there. So I really think it's something for people to keep. People are commenting how awesome it is in the chat. So thank you so much for that, Letta. And for those of you, Letta will be joining us every Curiosita. Rene has his thumb up. So he definitely liked your interpretation of him scratching his head there in the corner, Letta. So thank you very much for that. And then Victor just wanted to chat. So Letta will be joining us for every Curiosita that we have going forward for this year. And Letta, we will say goodbye and thank you to you. I'm aware you've got another meeting, so thank you very much. We'll have a wonderful.
Thank you, Dr. Marla. It was fascinating.
And
all the best.
Victor, please do join us to just give your discussion on TT, and then Harvey will close off and we will say goodbye. We are aware that we are 1 minute away from time. So thank you to that, Victor.
Good evening, colleagues. I just wanted to say thanks a lot for this opportunity, Dr. Marla. And it was quite a very exciting insight to actually hear, especially with Rene. He's actually, I see the power that he plays a lot on the management of people, one of the fundamentals of TT100. So I just wanted to actually quickly give you guys a quick rundown in a few seconds. So TT100 is actually a Business Innovation Awards program that we've been hosting the awards for the past 29 years. It's part of Da Vinci, but we run as an entity of a non-profit company. So this Friday, we are actually launching off our 29th awards program. So we would like to actually invite all of you guys with Mala's communication that she will be sending out to all of you. We will also be sharing the information about the actual awards, what it entails. And we would like to actually get all of you guys to come through and actually hear what is happening, hearing from the winners, hearing from some of our sponsors, and just actually understanding how we're looking at the fifth industrial revolution from a TT100. I'm not talking about the fourth, but more on the fifth. So it'll be quite exciting to hear that. Any other information that you would like to actually understand about TT100, I'll also ask Mala, maybe I'll also give you my details, my email, and also my contact details so that I can actually explain more information. Over to you, Prof.
Much appreciated. Marla, for keeping the session together. Lita, in her absence, for the beautiful drawing. And then most important, Yuri, for your contribution, input, and also Rene. I think it was definitely fruitful thought. A lot of things that we can go and nurture. And I think the wisdom is really valuable. And, you really gave us insight into what we should consider as business leaders as we move forward, not just to fly the flag of remarkability, but also really to be making a success out there, but never losing sight with reality. We work with people and we work with processes, and we must not get lost in the detail and always keep our eye on the horizon. So I want to thank all, and also to those that posed questions in the site, made a few comments, for allowing the time to be present here this afternoon. Enjoy the rest of the evening.